Hollywood legends seemed larger than life, but many stars were far shorter than the myths suggested. Behind the scenes, apple boxes, camera tricks, and careful staging created the illusion of towering heroes. In the Golden Age, height symbolized power, authority, and desirability. Audiences wanted their heroes to dominate the screen. Talent alone wasn't enough. Actors had to appear taller than life. Despite the illusions, these stars became legends, proving charisma outweighed inches. Tom Cruise, few actors embody the modern version of the height illusion, like Tom Cruise. Officially listed at 5'7", some claim he may be closer to 5'6". Yet Cruise has been one of the most bankable stars in history, carrying blockbusters for 4 decades. On set, Cruise often stands on platforms when paired with taller actresses. He uses custom footwear designed to add discrete inches. Camera operators shoot him from below, giving the impression of dominance. Even in the Mission Impossible series, his carefully choreographed stunts ensure he looks commanding. But Cruise turned what could have been a weakness into strength. His charisma, daring stunts, and relentless energy overshadow any concerns about stature. For audiences, he proves that action heroes aren't measured by height. They're measured by impact. Edward G. Robinson, standing just 5'5". Edward G. Robinson was never the towering gangster Hollywood usually imagined. Yet, in classics like Little Caesar, 1931, his presence was so overwhelming that he redefined the mobster archetype. Robinson's stocky frame and expressive face made him seem larger than life. Directors leaned into close-ups, letting his eyes do the intimidation that height could not. Audiences didn't care how tall he was. They believed in his menace. What's fascinating is how Robinson's stature became part of his appeal. He didn't need illusions. He embraced his look, proving that charisma and talent could shatter the myth that only tall men could command the screen. Al Pacino is a master of intensity. Officially 5'7", he often looked shorter beside his co-stars, yet no one doubted his dominance. In The Godfather, he transformed from the quiet Michael Corleone into a ruthless leader, not through height, but through controlled fury and psychological weight. Directors frequently shot Pacino in shadowed, upward angles, emphasizing his power. Off-screen, Pacino admitted he struggled with being underestimated for his stature early in his career. Yet his method acting style erased those doubts. Fans never saw Pacino as short. They saw him as volcanic. His height disappeared behind his fire, his ability to command silence, and his mastery of stillness. Mickey Rooney at 5'2". Mickey Rooney was one of the shortest leading men in Hollywood history. Yet, during the late 1930s, he was the #1 box office star in America. Rooney's charm came not from physical dominance, but from youthful energy. In the Andy Hardy films, audiences adored his boyish enthusiasm and mischievous grin. His height, in fact, reinforced his identity as the plucky underdog. Hollywood leaned into his image rather than hiding it. Rooney's career is proof that talent and relatability could sometimes bypass the industry's obsession with inches. He reminded audiences that heroes didn't have to be giants. They could be boys next door. Frank Sinatra stood around 5'7". Yet his voice, swagger, and style gave him the aura of a giant. In films like From Here to Eternity, 1953, he held his own against taller co-stars with pure charisma. Sinatra's secret weapon wasn't apple boxes, it was confidence. He carried himself with such assurance that audiences never questioned his presence. In the Rat Pack era, his height was irrelevant. What mattered was the way he filled a room with coolness and authority. Unlike many of his peers, Sinatra didn't rely heavily on visual tricks. He simply embodied presence. Hollywood might have been obsessed with inches, but Sinatra proved that attitude could outgrow any tape measure. Charlie Chaplin at 5'5". Charlie Chaplin was small in stature, but immense in cultural impact. His Little Tramp character became one of the most beloved figures in cinema history. Chaplin didn't try to appear taller. He embraced his size. His bowler hat, cane, and oversized shoes exaggerated his physicality, turning his small frame into a comedic weapon. Audiences around the world connected with him because he looked ordinary, relatable, and human. What made Chaplin extraordinary was his ability to make audiences laugh, cry, and reflect, all without speaking a word. In his case, height wasn't an illusion to be hidden, but a truth to be celebrated. Dustin Hoffman. When Dustin Hoffman burst onto the scene with The Graduate, 1967, he was a revelation. At 5'6", he didn't fit the mold of the tall, square-jawed leading man. Critics doubted whether he could carry a romantic film, but Hoffman's vulnerability and authenticity struck a chord with audiences. He didn't need to look like a superhero. He needed to look real. His career, from Midnight Cowboy to Rain Man, challenged the Hollywood notion that taller automatically meant better. Directors sometimes used clever framing to minimize height differences, but Hoffman's performances made such tricks unnecessary. He helped redefine masculinity on screen, showing that depth and emotion could be far more magnetic than inches. Sylvester Stallone is often imagined as a towering figure, thanks to Rocky and Rambo. Yet in reality, Stallone stands around 5'9", and some reports place him closer to 5'8". His films, however, consistently portrayed him as a mythic warrior, larger than life. Behind the scenes, Stallone made clever use of camera tricks and lifts in footwear to give his characters a commanding edge. Directors framed him against shorter supporting actors, emphasizing his physical dominance. Costumes were tailored to broaden his shoulders and elongate his figure, turning him into a cinematic gladiator. But Stallone's true height illusion came not from inches, but from heart. His underdog story in Rocky mirrored his own struggles in Hollywood. Audiences weren't inspired by how tall he looked. They were inspired by how hard he fought. Robert De Niro, often listed at 5'9", but believed by some to be closer to 5'8", is proof that acting ability can eclipse physical stature. His gift lies in transformation. Whether bulking up for Raging Bull or shrinking into shadows for Taxi Driver, De Niro makes you forget the man and see only the character. On set, directors often avoided pairing him directly with towering co-stars. In Heat, his scenes opposite Al Pacino, another shorter actor, felt evenly matched, with no need for tricks. De Niro's meticulous craft made his presence feel monumental, regardless of height. Audiences never measured De Niro in inches. They measured him in performances, raw, authentic, unforgettable. James Cagney was barely 5'5", yet he exploded on screen with energy few could match. In classics like The Public Enemy, 1931, he redefined the gangster not as a looming giant, but as a compact ball of fire. Cagney's physicality was electric. He didn't need height. His speed, gestures, and fierce delivery made him dangerous. Directors used tight shots and frantic movement to amplify his intensity. Even when standing beside taller actors, Cagney dominated simply by refusing to be ignored. Audiences adored him because he felt real. His smaller stature only made his rage and determination more compelling. He proved you didn't have to be tall to be larger than life. Humphrey Bogart, the face of noir and the ultimate tough romantic, was about 5'8". In an era when leading men were expected to be taller, this could have been a liability. But Bogart turned it into a non-issue through sheer presence. Directors often shot him in trench coats and hats, elongating his silhouette. Co-stars like Ingrid Bergman, 5'9", required careful camera work. Bergman often stood on lower platforms in Casablanca to maintain the illusion. Yet none of that mattered. Bogart's voice, weary charm, and defiant posture made him immortal. He wasn't tall, but he was monumental in spirit. Danny DeVito at just 4'10". Danny DeVito is one of the shortest stars in Hollywood history. But unlike others who leaned on illusions, DeVito embraced his stature fully, turning it into comedic power. In films like Throw Mama from The Train and Twins, his small size became a source of humor, irony, and subversion. Opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins, the contrast was so exaggerated it became iconic. DeVito's brilliance lies in self-awareness. Instead of hiding behind tricks, he leaned into his uniqueness. He showed that Hollywood didn't need to make him taller. He could steal every scene exactly as he was. Alan Ladd may be Hollywood's most famous height illusion. Standing around 5'6", he was a major leading man of the 1940s and 50s. To maintain his heroic image, directors constantly placed him on apple boxes when acting opposite taller co-stars. This practice became so routine that apple boxes were nicknamed ladders in his honor. Publicists inflated his height in magazines, while cinematographers used every trick to give him authority on screen. Despite the deception, Ladd's career flourished. Audiences adored his stoic charisma in films like Shane, 1953. His story shows just how far Hollywood went to protect the illusion of stature, and how one actor's career literally stood on a box. Elijah Wood fast forward to the modern era, and Elijah Wood provides a fascinating contrast. Standing 5'6", he became world-famous as Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings. Here, height wasn't a weakness. It was central to the story. Peter Jackson used forced perspective to make Wood and other Hobbit actors appear even shorter than they were. Instead of hiding height, the films celebrated it, turning smallness into heroism. Audiences embraced Frodo not because he was tall, but because he carried immense courage. Wood's success shows how Hollywood has shifted. Height is no longer something to disguise. It can be woven into storytelling itself. The history of Hollywood's height illusions reads like a magician's manual. When reality threatened the image, filmmakers got creative. The most famous tool was the apple box, a sturdy wooden crate that gave actors a boost of 3 to 12 inches. Used discreetly, it allowed shorter stars to meet their co-stars eye to eye. Alan Ladd was its most legendary user, but nearly every actor under 6 feet has stood on one at some point. Another trick was trench digging. If a taller actress stood beside a shorter leading man, the crew dug a shallow trench for her to stand in, equalizing the height difference. The opposite could also happen, placing the shorter actor on a hidden platform. Costume design played a vital role. Long coats, vertical stripes, and narrow silhouettes elongated frames. Shoes were fitted with Cuban heels or hidden lifts, often adding 2 inches without drawing suspicion. Cinematographers used framing tricks. Shooting from a low angle made the actor loom larger, while positioning the camera slightly below eye level created a sense of dominance. Close-ups, rather than wide shots, minimized direct comparisons between actors. Even set design joined the game. Doorways, chairs, and props were scaled to make stars appear taller in proportion. Audiences rarely noticed these subtle manipulations. Finally, there was PR manipulation. Fan magazines, controlled by studios, printed inflated statistics. A 5'7" actor became 5'10" in press releases, while actresses' heights were adjusted to make couples appear balanced. The lie was repeated so often that it became accepted truth. These tricks weren't harmless. They reflected Hollywood's deep anxiety about masculinity, image, and power. But they also showed the industry's genius at illusion. In a town built on fantasy, even height could be reinvented. Why did height matter so much? The answer lies in human psychology. Across cultures, taller men are often perceived as more authoritative, attractive, and capable of leadership. Hollywood amplified this bias, turning it into a requirement for stardom. For many actors, this created hidden insecurities. Alan Ladd, despite his success, was tormented by jokes about his apple boxes. Tom Cruise, though one of the most successful stars ever, has faced endless tabloid obsession with his height. The industry's demand for stature reinforced toxic masculinity, making shorter actors feel inadequate despite immense talent. Yet audiences often cared less than studios believed. Viewers fell in love with Chaplin's humor, Rooney's energy, Pacino's fire, and De Niro's intensity. What captivated them was presence, not inches. In modern times, this perception is shifting. Stars like Daniel Radcliffe and Tom Holland openly joke about their height, dismantling the old stigma. Authenticity has become more valuable than illusions. Today, fans celebrate short kings as confident, talented men who defy outdated stereotypes. Social media has made it harder to keep secrets. Paparazzi photos reveal real-life proportions, and fans can easily compare stats online. The old illusions are fading. Actors like Kit Harington, 5'8", Daniel Radcliffe, 5'5", and Tom Holland, 5'8", no longer hide their height. Instead, they embrace it, letting talent define them. Leading men don't need to tower anymore. They need to connect. Hollywood has evolved from height equals hero to talent equals hero. The myth is breaking, and that may be the industry's healthiest transformation yet. Hollywood's greatest illusion was never just in its special effects or elaborate sets. It was in the inches borrowed, the apple boxes hidden, the myths carefully sold. From Alan Ladd standing on crates to Tom Cruise defying gravity and stunts, these stars remind us. Greatness isn't measured in feet or inches. It's measured in presence, charisma, and the ability to capture hearts. In the end, Hollywood taught us a timeless truth. Legends are not tall because of their height. They are tall because they stand above doubt. And when we look back at the silver screen, it becomes clear. Audiences never truly cared about inches. What they cared about was the emotion an actor could stir, the conviction in a single line, or the unforgettable moment burned into cinematic history. Humphrey Bogart's gravelly voice, James Cagney's fierce energy, or Frank Sinatra's smooth charm, all of these qualities far outweighed the ruler's verdict. In fact, you could argue that the myth of Hollywood height is what makes the industry so fascinating. It reminds us that cinema is about transformation. A man barely 5'5" could be turned into a warrior, a lover, or a legend larger than life. And isn't that what we seek in movies? An escape from the ordinary? A chance to believe in the impossible? So next time you watch an old classic or a modern blockbuster, remember, the actor you see towering on screen may not stand tall in real life, but through their art, they've climbed higher than any measurement could record. Because in Hollywood, height doesn't make the hero. The performance does. If you enjoyed this journey into Hollywood's greatest illusion, don't forget to like, share, and comment your favorite short king of cinema. And of course, subscribe for more untold stories behind the silver screen. DeVito's brilliance lies in self-awareness. Instead of hiding behind tricks, he leaned into his uniqueness. He showed that Hollywood didn't need to make him taller. He could steal every scene exactly as he was.